I found Big Frank to be very interesting. He was certainly when you said that at a certain point in the book you said we're about to meet a character who is far worse than Gino in most ways because of his actual intelligence. There's a so um, right after Big Frank does his whole thing, and he Tony Delaguardo, that was the guy that he screwed over. You know,
Yeah.
Tony thought that he was gonna pull one over on everybody because you know all the stuff happening. He thought he was gonna pull one over and get Gino, kill Gino at the same time and everything. And at the end, it turns out that Big Frank was actually knew the whole plan, was setting up everybody, and ended up killing Tony Delaguardo or giving him over to the foundation, not the foundation. That's in the origin. Giving it over to the commission, giving him over to the commission, and he thinks that it's a noble thing. But Big Frank secretly knows that actually he's got it. He got everything he wanted. And at the very end, he takes Tony Delaguardo's very young wife to on vacation. If you want to look it up, you don't have to, but if you want to look it up, it's so comma as we leave the pair in their mutual embrace. It's right when they're having sex, basically.
Let's see.
Um,
So, comma. Hold on. Fine. So,
comma, as we leave the pair in their mutual embrace.
as we leave the pair. That should be enough. Let's see. So, as we leave. So, comma, as we leave the pair. Oops. Oh, that doesn't go. No. So, comma, as we leave the pair. Okay. In the middle, let me end this chapter with these goads to consider the brilliant and treacherous creature that Big Frank Conchetto is and was. Okay.
Right, got it. So yeah, the beginning of the paragraph begins. Yeah, they're having sex. They're having sex, but then we get to almost cannibalistic frenzy, and there we go. Now consider this: off in the corner of Big Frank's and Victoria's hotel room in Bermuda, less than either of their bodies lengths away from the two of them, is a small beetle or similar insect snared in a delicate web that somehow resists its motions and power, and making its way toward this creature is the creator of this web. This dilemma. So stop right there. When I first read that, I was thinking it's a metaphor about Big Frank. Big Frank's the spider. Maybe it is too. Big Frank's the spider. He pulled all these webs together to get what he wanted. And I had to read this a couple times as I was going through my notes. The next part is this dilemma beneath the scenes with which we have primarily been concerned with is, or was, no less real than those which we have detailed. Yet, we usually see only one and ignore most other levels of existence. We avoid the pain and violence of the cosmos by imposing a loneliness of sameness on ourselves. And if this loneliness swaddles and anesthetizes us, its desolation, a suitable enough narcotic for us creatures of thought, lacking such loneliness and the ability to deny it, the moment of the smaller kind gives way to the injection of a realer poison to the beetle-like creature. In the minutes of moaning and sexual pleasure, not far removed from the scene, a small death marks its moment to the space-time continuum. Just as Victoria Delaguardo's ecstatic orgasm with her newfound lover reaches its oral apex, and Big Frank's 5 o'clock shadow is flavored with her schniz. Very funny. The cold of the compound eye becomes impervious to light. This is the part. The cold of the compound eye becomes impervious to light, and the layers of scenery reveal what a mere epiphenomenon life really is. Furthermore, it is not only lacks primacy, it lacks meaning. It is only we, through our minds and wills, who grant it meaning. We are the agents of what we mold, and in that clay we give or bring life its life that we call meaning.
That's a great passage. I was just looking at it. Very few people can use a big word throwing around to that degree.
Yeah, it was very cool. Yes, I read it a few times. You make quite the leap when you have the spider. Because again, if I was writing it, all right, spider metaphor, Big Frank's the spider. Okay, I get it. I mean, but the whole you go into the meaning thing. I thought that was very cool.
Well, here's the thing, because I've often used animals metaphorically. I've mentioned in a later book, I used the death of a deer over and over again as the drive for a character in search of his wife. And here's the thing. When you set up a novel, unlike this woman who had to post it, everything and say, oh, I've seen people who've outlined books or movies and need to inject a greater meaning into something here or there. If you are soaked within. If you are totally immersed in this total immersion style that really developed in this book, things are going to naturally crisscross, and they will bring meaning to each other just by the clash of their essences. And so I don't have to sit and say, oh, I have to make this scene of these two loathsome people fucking have a greater meaning. It just came to me when I was writing. I'm saying, oh, so let's see, here, they're fucking moaning here. Up in the corner is some spider and whatnot. And you will, as the reader, imbue what you want into it. You might see the spider as just a metaphor for Big Frank. That's a valid interpretation, I guess. But here I go into, if you've read someone like Lauren Isley, this is a very Lauren Isley-like moment where we're pulling out, and Big Frank, to that spider-like creature, whatever it is, looking down, is going to be smaller. And if you went farther out, there's a great film, if you ever want to look it up, I think it's called Powers of 10, made in the early 80s. And it's about a man and a woman. It's a documentary, only about 10, 12 minutes long. A man and a woman are at a picnic in a Chicago park. And so we see them from about 10 feet up. And then the camera pulls back to the power of 2. It's 100 feet up. And then it pulls back, and it's 1,000 feet up. And then it's 10,000 feet. And then every 10 power. And so as we go out every power until we're at about 10 to the 45th or 46th power. And we see the whole of the universe. And it's a great thing because it puts things in perspective, or the whole of the observable universe, I should say. It puts things into some really great perspective that you don't get. And then we slowly get, then the second half of the film, the last 5 or 6 minutes, goes back down 10 powers until we're back to the couple in the park. And I always keep this in mind because, if you're driving out, especially like here in the Texas hill country, the hills are only maybe 1,200 feet or so at their apex above sea level. They're maybe 300 or 400 feet above the surrounding area. But as you drive out in that, even in those small hills, you get a sense of your place in the cosmos. You look at the night sky. My God, how can, the solipsism of the human race collectively, the solipsism of people, like I've mentioned again, just watching over the last week or two, these snippets of this Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, these two sort of LA narcissists, Hollywood narcissist types, that everything comes down to them and their career, that everything is about me. And it's like, fuck, I truly believe that art is, and to a lesser degree science, are the great things that humankind has constructed that will be around in 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million years or whatnot, as long as we're human or even beyond. But is the Vincetti brothers singularly as important as the cosmos? No, it's a part of the cosmos. No matter, you can't get around it. Shakespeare or Kubrick or Orson Welles or Kepler or Newton, all of these great minds, these great people, leaders that you can think of, are part of a larger whole. You can't get away from it. You and I, even though we're on opposite sides of this, little planet that we're on, we are still inextricably bound, not just because we're Skyping with each other, but some of the air that you breathed when you were a young boy has probably made it to my lungs as the things have circulated. Some of the air that was once breathed by Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan has made it to your lungs. We're inextricably bound. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't surmount that. And so this pulling out just 10 feet or 12 feet, whatever how high the ceiling might have been, is just to give a sense of perspective to what we've seen. Is that really important? Maybe to these creatures, but let's move on to these other people who maybe are not involved in Big Frank's wickedry.
I see. Yeah, you play with that idea quite a bit. I think at one point you say the room is the house. You know what I mean?
When I'm talking about opening doors,
piece of the part of the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how you do that. I think it's I don't want to skip all the way to the end of the book, but you have that really great poem by Charles Van Doren, who I'd never heard of before. He's got that poem, "The bird died flying and fell in flowers. Oh, what a world and with them hours." It's fucking gorgeous right there. Let's see here. I think that's very cool how you do that. I don't know, I never known
Did you
anything
say
about
Charles
maximalism.
Van Doren? It's Mark Van Doren, the father. Charles Van Doren.
Oh, that's his son. I skipped it. Yes. Charles Van Doren, the infamous intellectual cheat whose scandal
right.
disrupted the whole thing. Right. Mark Van Doren, a beautiful little poem that right there. And it's something I guess you have you always had that when you write?
No, something's come up. I mean, this is one of the things I've mentioned before. Again, I don't know if I mentioned to you. My mind is like a convection current. So as I'm in the process of creating, whether it's a play, whether it was a poem, whether it's a book or whatnot, things come up in the process of writing that I don't intend. That's, the Gulf Stream, the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf Stream waters warm northern Europe because they go up, the west side of the Atlantic, and then they head towards Europe. That's why Europe, London, which is about, I think, the same level, or maybe even farther north than Montreal, is a lot warmer than Montreal in Quebec. And so if that water, the warm water from the Gulf warms northern Europe, then it brings the warm weather on top of it. Then it sinks down to the bottom and goes back down, the great currents that go throughout the whole world ocean. And thoughts and things like that, I'll be writing something or I'll be working. I'll give you a perfect example, and I mentioned this to a young man. There's this trans man that I work with. She's going to be a trans man, and she looks to me for some guidance because she's only 20, or he is only 20. And so I was talking to him about I had recently come across this music reaction channel, a channel called Brad and Lex, and it's this young black couple who listen to hard rock. There's a bizarre meme here in the U.S. where black people listen to white music and comment on it. These funny white people, and it's odd to see black people like, damn, that white boy knows how to play, or something like that. But there's this young black couple. The woman's name is Lex, and when I saw her, it was weird because she's a very cute, energetic young woman of about 30, and she reminded me so much of this young black woman I dated in the mid-'90s in Minneapolis. I had met her at this store that was run by the pop star Prince, and there was poetry readings every Sunday. And so I knew her for about 6 months. I finally asked her out, and we went together for a couple of months, fucked around a little bit, this and that. And then she decided to move to a suburb, and apparently, even though the suburb was closer than Minneapolis was to where we were, she ended things. So fast forward, I actually saw another woman a few years ago I worked with who reminded me a bit of this one. But this woman who's called Lex, she actually has, like, she's a pale, a lighter skinned black one, but has freckles on her face, which is really cute. And I didn't remember. In my mind's eye, I had forgotten that this woman that I was involved with, who was about 4 or 5 years younger than me, also was a black woman who had freckles on her face. And it wasn't until I saw the freckles on this woman on this music reaction channel that I remember that. That's what I mean by a convection current, because in my mind for all these years, when I would think of her, I forgot about the freckles on her, over her nose and face. And it's odd, rare to see a black person with freckles, obviously, because their faces generally are going to have the melanin that's going to be more, at least in their face, and the stuff exposed to the sun, more color congruent. And yet I see this, and instantly I said, God damn, how the hell could I have forgotten the freckles on this young woman that I was involved with's face? But there's the convection. It came up. Now, I bring this up because let's say if I was writing, and I think I did write a play about her, but I never mentioned the freckles because at that time, a year or so ago, I hadn't seen this music reaction gal. But these little details will come to you. So probably maybe at some point, if I write a future play or a book and I mention that I wrote a play and how I forgot about it, or even if I don't do that, these little things come and they stick with you and you don't recognize them, but boom, something will bring them up. It could be my reach artistically, thinking of details and saying, oh, I'll give you another example. I was adopted as a 2.5-year-old child. I had many major medical problems. So my parents, who were the oldest people at the time in the late 60s to ever be approved for an adoption, were allowed to adopt me. And I remember coming out of the adoption agency the first day that I was with my parents. I was 2.5, going closer to 3 maybe. And I remember them walking me down the street outside the adoption agency, and I remember a hill. Years later, when I went to look for my natural family, I went back to the adoption agency, and it's on a slight incline. But what I thought was a hill in my mind was merely a slight bump of 2 or 3 inches of the pavement. But because I'm a little tot, that seemed to me to be a hill. And it wasn't until I went back to that same spot 20-some years later, 23, 24 years later, whatever it was, that I was wrong. It wasn't a hill on that. We weren't on a hill. It was just a little rise, a little bump, that because instead of being 6 foot tall or 5 foot 10 inches off the floor of my eyes were only 2.5 feet or 2 feet off the ground. And so the loss of the detail of this young woman that I was intimate with over a quarter of a century ago, her freckles didn't come back to me until I saw this music gal with the freckles, and the fact that it was almost a quarter of a century after I had left this place, and in my mind I always remembered that hill. It was wrong. These things come back to you, and those are the kinds of things you have to jump on, because everyone has those kinds of details. They may not have a black young woman who's a former lover who had freckles. They may not have ever been adopted and misremembered something as a tot that they took with them to adulthood. But I am sure that there is a woman, or I'm assuming you're straight, or a man if you're not, that there's a detail of a former lover of yours that you have forgotten, that when you're 42, you will meet someone who has a voice similar or look similar, and you'll say, oh, that reminds me of Juliana, or whoever your girlfriend might have been, or something that your father might have said to you in giving you advice that comes back to you, maybe just listening to something I said. These are the things that evoke those things that say, yes, I get that. Alex recently did a thing on Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-5 versus Gravity's Rainbow. I don't know if you saw that or you follow Alex Sherriman stuff, but those kinds of little details in Vonnegut's novel there's many reasons it's a much better book than Gravity Rains, but it's those kinds of reasons that get to you and say, yes, I understand what Vonnegut is saying. That make that book a great book, that make the Vincetti Brothers a great book, and the vast bulk of my written work great itself.
Yeah, I see. I've read a little bit of Vonnegut. I read Cat's Cradle, really great book. I've not, because of you actually, I've decided not to read Thomas Pynchon. I decided not to do it.
Well, I will tell you, if you ever have I don't know how quickly you read, a week or two to waste, it is always good to experience bad films or bad art to a degree. You don't have to read everything of Pynchon, but if you read his stuff, because that will make if you read, for example, and I would say Google Alex's Auto Machination site, watch the 2-hour or 3-hour video he did with this fellow Joel Parrish, and they will quote things, and you will see from just what they are quoting why Vonnegut is a better writer and why Slaughterhouse-5 is the book that Pynchon wished Gravity's Rainbow could be.